Hello and welcome to the debut of our new webinar series, Tinkercad Teachers. You're probably here because you're thinking about teaching 3D design. You might also be here because you're wondering, how the heck do I get started? Well, you're in the right place. This series was designed to provide you with all the tips, tricks, advice, and tools you need to start, ramp up, and get super awesome at using Tinkercad in your classroom. For this very first episode, we've spent a lot of time, thinking about all the things that you might be worried about and taking this leap. And hopefully we have them covered in the next 60 minutes or so. So just a little information about me before we get started. My name is Kellyanne Mahoney. I'm a youth program specialist at Autodesk. I'm also a national board certified teacher and hold a master's degree in education. I joined Autodesk after teaching in the Boston Public Schools for 13 years, and I'm hoping that this might come as a relief to some of you. My background is not in teaching technology, but in English language arts. So at this point, you're probably wondering, how on earth did I wind up here? It's a long story, but to summarize, as I progressed and developed as a teacher, particularly a teacher working in a large urban public school district, I became more and more interested and focused on the idea of how I can make teaching and learning for my students more accessible and more equitable. And luckily, I worked with a team of teachers who are also interested in the same things as me. And as a result of kind of us feeling this way about wanting to make school more equitable and accessible for students, we started to design interdisciplinary projects and did a lot more project-based learning so that students could, we could teach students in different ways, and also so that we could, students could show what they know in different ways as well. And a natural extension of this became integrating technology. So probably the biggest lesson that I learned through this process was that you don't need to be an expert in order to introduce a new technology into the classroom. In fact, some of the best learning that I've even had as a professional, and I feel like my students have had, is when we're learning alongside each other. And it's super cool when kids actually kids figure things out. You could be 3 steps ahead of them, and by the end of the lesson, they're 5 steps ahead of you. And that's such a great moment. You don't need to be an expert in order to introduce new technology to students. It's learning along with them is half the fun. Okay, so next, how to participate. So first, this will be step by step, so just follow along with me. You might at some point want to open up another window in order to follow along with me. You don't need to do that yet because I'll prompt you when we're really getting into that part. So step by step, follow me. 2, if you fall behind, don't worry about it. This is being recorded, so you can watch it again. You'll receive an email with the link to the recording within a few days, and also some cool resources too. If you have any questions, we actually have a team of super awesome Autodesk experts who are there waiting to answer and field all your questions. I think that they've already started doing that. One of the last things I want to say is I love teaching, and one of the reasons why I love teaching is I love when I'm teaching that I can look out at people's faces and kind of get that immediate feedback from people's faces about whether or not they're confused or they're happy or they're deep in thought. That is definitely a limitation to this format of teaching, so please, 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 if I say anything that's confusing, please make sure that you ask questions, because I'm happy to answer them, and I'm even happy to hang out after the webinar is over to answer questions as well and demonstrate some of what we're going to be doing. So next, so who is Autodesk? Well, we're a software company. As you can see in these cool pictures, we make software for people who make things. Our vision is to help people imagine, design, and create a better world. So what sorts of things do we make? Or what sorts of things do people make with our software? Basically anything. Autodesk makes software for people who make things like buildings, animation, prosthetics, consumer products like cars, anything that needs to be designed, visualized, or simulated before it's made. And the thing that I love most about working at Autodesk is how our tools make design more accessible to basically anyone. Because we believe that with the right tools and some imagination, anyone can make anything. And the little girl that you actually see that was in the bottom corner of the last slide, I think that she's a good illustration of this. Her name is Jordan. I believe that she's 12 years old now, and she was introduced to 3D design about 3 years ago through this cool program called Superhero Cyborgs. And the students who were participating in the program were challenged with taking their limb loss, like you can see in the picture that Jordan is missing the lower part of her limb. They were tasked with looking at their limb loss as a blank canvas versus disability. So basically, how can you take what you have and make it even cooler? So make your prosthetic even cooler than if you had a natural arm. So the way that she made it cooler, one of the ways, because she actually came up with several versions of this, but one of the ways that she made her arm cooler was by designing this really cool glitter cannon. And I actually had the opportunity over the summer to see her demonstrate it, and it shoots out this super fine purple glitter. And her mom was actually the target, and she was wearing a black shirt, and it was a good thing she had a good sense of humor about it, because it really goes everywhere. It's super cool. So since this experience, Jordan has traveled all over the country to meet with other kids who suffer from limb loss and to teach them about rapid prototyping and 3D design and using Tinkercad. She even appeared on the Rachel Ray Show and pitched one of her ideas to Mark Cuban from Shark Tank to a very positive response. Right, so knowing Jordan's story has really helped me better imagine the stories that the journeys that students could take in learning Tinkercad. What I learned from Jordan's mother was that she, prior to learning 3D design, had been very insecure and very self-conscious. But when you meet her now, it's like she's this luminary. She's like an old soul. And it just really made me think about the impact of her experience, how if more students were able to do what she was able to do. So when students are on a journey in Tinkercad, they're beginning with an idea. They maybe are drafting it out on paper. They go through the design and revision process in Tinkercad, and then they're able to see their idea turn into reality. And maybe they 3D print it, like you can see in this image. Maybe they 3D print it, and they don't like the way that it came out. So then they start over again. So it's also an iterative process as well. So you can see how this type of learning could lead to a whole lifetime of making. And for me, that's super cool and inspiring. So how does Autodesk support this way of learning? Well, one, it provides free access to its software for students, educators, and educational institutions worldwide. But I think even more important than giving away free software is how we build platforms to help learning happen faster. Tinkercad is an awesome example of this. It's one of the most popular classroom tools for creating simple designs from scratch and quickly modifying existing designs. It's free, it's online, and you can use it in your web-based browser, which means you don't have to download any software in order to use it. You can just jump right in and get started. It's also extremely intuitive and easy to use, and I'm going to be showing you some built-in lessons that are on the Tinkercad page that will help you learn the ropes. This makes it perfect for beginners, both young and old. So a lot of people have misconceptions that Tinkercad is just for elementary students, for example. But you can do some really cool projects with high school students using Tinkercad. Even some of the engineers here at Autodesk, when they're designing something, might play around in Tinkercad first because they know what a flexible platform it is and how it is easy to make a quick prototype. And then maybe if they like what they need in Tinkercad, they can import it into a more sophisticated program. So Tinkercad is super versatile in that way. In addition to Tinkercad, we also make Fusion 360, which is a more advanced program for when your students are Tinkercad pros and ready to take the next step in 3D modeling. Instructables is another online learning platform that I'm going to be showing to you. It's something that you could kind of compare to Khan Academy, explaining it to students. It features hands-on projects and more supplementary course materials. Similar to Fusion 360, Design Academy is more advanced with a focus on post-secondary to professional training. All right, so moving on to the next step. So what are we going to learn today? So we're going to start off really simple by verifying email accounts. Next, we're going to move on to how you invite your students via code. Then we're going to talk about how you can create groups for easy moderating and monitoring. And finally, we're going to, actually not, that's not finally, but one of the cool things we're going to be doing is navigating the Tinkercad editor. And finally, integrating cool 3D design projects into your curriculum, so Minecraft, Pokemon, bricks, and more. And that little illustration in the left-hand corner is you. That's you slaying your fears. You don't need to worry about Tinkercad. It's super fun and you can do it. So our agenda for today. We're going to begin kind of slow. We're going to begin by walking through the Tinkercad teacher logistics together. So things that you just need to, nuts and bolts sort of stuff that you need to know right away to get started. So verifying email accounts, moderating students, and creating groups. Secondly, we're going to dive in together. So this is the fun. Not that the first part isn't going to be fun, but this is what I think is going to be the super fun part. And this is when we're going to navigate the user interface and editor. We're going to design something cool. I hope that you think that it's cool. And we're also going to explore a standards-aligned Tinkercad project, because I know that teachers love Common Core standards, so we wanted to make sure we got those in there. And finally, last but not least, and I can stick around for this at the very end too if we go a little bit long, you're going to try it yourself. So I'm going to give you some ideas of how you can play around with the Tinkercad based on what you're learning today. And you can hang out and ask questions. I'm also going to provide you with some resources so that you can connect with others as well. So that's our agenda. So let's get hands-on. So at this point, this cute little animation that I'll explain further is the signal for you to open up a new window in your browser and go to Tinkercad.com. If you haven't created a Tinkercad account yet, now's the time. It'll only take a minute or so for you to make that account. All you need to do is put in your email, a username, and a password, and you'll also need to verify your account, but you can do that along with us because that's the next step, is we're going to be talking about Tinkercad account verification. And as you're setting up, I just wanted to explain these cute two little guys. So these are two figures that you can actually make in Tinkercad, but we also, Tinkercad has integrated into it circuits assemblies so that you can actually, whatever it is that you make in Tinkercad, you can animate your figures by adding in an LED light or a little switch that makes your creation vibrate. So we're not going to get super deep into circuits, but I do want to just expose you to some of the other cool things that you can do with Tinkercad just beyond just 3D design. All right, so hopefully now everyone's at Tinkercad.com and you've set up your Tinkercad account. All right, so next up is Tinkercad account verification. If you already have a Tinkercad account but haven't logged in for a while, the first step you might have to take is to verify your email account. People setting up new accounts need to do this also. To protect your account and prevent fraud, Autodesk is now requiring an email verification. So this just started on December 4th for the majority of accounts, including Tinkercad. So let's walk through this together. It's pretty easy. If you don't have access to the email address associated with your account, this is a simple fix. You can change it at the URL that's on this slide, so accounts.autodesk.com. You will only be required to verify your email once, and then you're good to go. And if you created your account recently, you've probably already verified your account. That's what happened to me. Okay, so you can get started by opening up, so you can maybe go to a new tab in your browser and go to accounts.autodesk.com. When you get there, you'll see in the menu at the top, My Profile, Security Settings, and Linked Accounts. You want to click on the icon that's a key where it says Security Settings. Once you click on that, it's going to take you to a page that looks like this, where you see Change Email. And next to that turquoise button that says Change Email, the second one there, you should see a button next to it that says Verify Email. If you don't see that, don't freak out because you've actually lucked out by already having verified your email without knowing it. This actually happened to me because I went to do my Tinkercad account verification. I was like, oh no, I'm following the instructions, but I don't see that button. If you don't see the button, your email's already been verified, so you don't need to worry about it. All right, so the next thing that you want to do is check your email. So after you click that button is going to prompt you to check your email. When you go into your email that's associated with your Tinkercad account, you'll have a message from noreply@mail.accounts.autodesk.com. Just click on that button, whatever it is that it tells you to do. So click on the Verify Email button or link, and that's it. Head back to Tinkercad.com and start tinkering. I also wanted to provide you with a list of things to not worry about. So here are some things you don't have to worry about. I feel like we don't get enough of these lists as teachers. So don't worry if your students are under 13. There's no verification required. That's actually the next thing that we're going to be talking about is how to verify your account or how you get your students on who are under 13, but they do not need to verify their accounts. If you signed in with a social account, so if you signed in with your Google account, for example, there's no verification required either. I actually think that that's what I did, and that's why I didn't realize that I had actually verified my account already. One situation that's particular to schools that we wanted to think about is some schools, as a security measure, block outside emails from the school. So if that is the case, then all you need to do is contact the IT director in your building, or you might have to go to the IT director in your district. I've done this before to get certain safe sites unblocked. You just need to ask them to unblock no reply at mail.accounts.autodesk.com. Because if you do that, then they'll be able to verify their accounts. This is also important anyways, and this is a safe email address. This is important because we know how students are with their passwords and not necessarily always remembering them. In order for them to reset their password, they also need to be able to accept emails from this email address. So this isn't even just about account verification, it's just about them being able to maintain their accounts as well. If you're fascinated by the topic of Tinkercad account verification and want to read more, which is basically what I just said, you can go to Autodesk, it's a .sk at the end, /FAQ, verify, and you can read more about Tinkercad account verification there. Okay, so now that you're in, so our next step is to get yourself set up and also get your students set up so that they can use it. So now that you're in, you need to click Teach at the top of your menu. So you should see this kind of highlight. For me, it's highlighted in orange. You want to go there and you want to click it. And if this is the first time that you're opening up your Tinkercad account, so again, we're back to Tinkercad.com. If this is the first time that you are opening up this account, you're going to need to choose your role. So you're going to choose student, parent, teacher, or other. Make sure you choose teacher, because if you don't, you can't go back and fix it. So once you hit apply, it's kind of stuck there and it'd be annoying to try to fix. So just make sure that you click teacher. And then next, so once you're set up as a teacher and you go to teach again, you're not going to see that anymore. You're actually going to see a page that prompts you to create an invitation code. It might be blank for you right now, but if you click underneath create a new code, it'll generate a code for you. This is the invitation code that you give to students. So I'm at this point going to navigate away from this slideshow and actually take you into my real actual Tinkercad account. Okay, so here I am. So this is my Tinkercad account. So in my account, you can see all my creations that I have here. And these are some things that I've made or some things that, that I've copied and tinkered from others. We'll talk about that later. But for now, I'd like you to click Teach. And if you click Teach, it brings you to this page where you generate your code. So if I have a code here right now, but if I didn't, I'd click Create New Code. All right, so how do you monitor students? So what you need to do is go into the upper right-hand corner where you see the icon. Hopefully you have a picture there. If you don't, you should add one. So I'm going to click on my icon, and I am going to click where it says Moderate Kids. You might not see that yet, because if you haven't invited any kids to your account using this invitation code, you're not going to see this Moderate Kids list. So I'm going to click on it, and once I click on this, you're going to see the list of students that are associated with my account. So if I scroll down here, you'll see this. So any one of these students, I can, because they're associated with my account, I can dip in and I can check in on what they're doing. So for example, I can click on Ninja Kiwi 92. And he's got some cool stuff going on here. So I can see what he's up to and what he's making. I'm going to click back here. And back to moderate students. So again, so moderate kids. Okay, so once you've generated an invitation code from the Teach page, you should copy or write down the invitation code and give this code to your students. You might even keep it written up on your board. Those over 13 can enter the invitation code on their profile page. So as you can see, I'm actually go from teacher mode to student mode for a second so that you can see what that looks like. So this is student mode. So I just created this fake student account. I actually created this account for a student who's over 13 because I wanted you to see what that looks like. Because for students who are under 13, it's like automatic that they're prompted to enter the invitation code. For students who are over 13 who already have email addresses, they can just jump in and get designing right away. But you want to associate yourself with them so you can see what they're working on, so how they have to do it. So again, this isn't a student account. They're going to click on their very cool profile picture. They're going to go down to Profile. And in Profile, they're going to be prompted to enter an invitation code. So you see that right there, to enter an invitation code. When I click on that, they type it in there, save changes, and then they're connected to you. So they'd be in your list of students. So they can add additional invitation codes. Students who are under 13 can also add additional invitation codes by going through the same process as kids over 13. So say, for example, you have a student who also does Tinkercad with another teacher, so they're already connected to a moderator. Students can have multiple moderators. So you just give them your invitation code, but they would have to go in through this process and add it. If you no longer, so any student who creates an account and uses your code in the following 7 days will be linked to you as their teacher moderator. If you no longer want students to be able to use a code, simply generate a new code on the Teach page. This action will block all previous codes. While the code is only valid for 7 days, once a student is linked to a teacher moderator, their account will remain active beyond the 7-day window. Okay, so I'm going to hop back into my Tinkercad account. So here we are. So we've already learned how to verify email accounts. We've already learned how to invite students so that we can moderate them. We've already looked at how you can check in on students and see what they're doing to monitor their work. The next cool feature that I want to show you is how you can create groups. Before we do that though, just a note, I noticed as a teacher in looking at this list of students that they're not their real names. That's good though, because it protects their privacy on the internet as well. But for me as a teacher in a practical sense, if I need to grade them or I need to monitor their work, I need to know their usernames. For me, what I would probably do is set up some sort of online form for them to fill out, like a Google form, for example, where they put their first and last name, their section, and their username, so that when you're looking at their work, when you have them put into groups, for example, and you're trying to grade their work, you'll know who's who. So that's just like a tip that I would give you in terms of being able to manage this. So another neat teacher feature in Tinkercad is the ability to create groups. Groups provide a way for teachers to better organize students. For example, you might create a group for each section you teach if you teach multiple sections. Here's just some more info on groups before I show you how to do it. So students will not know they are in groups, only the teacher. Students can be added to multiple groups. And deleting a group will not remove a student account or terminate moderation. So if you accidentally make a group and want to get rid of it, it has no effect on the student. And students don't even know that they're in the group. All right, so to create a new group, you need to scroll up and you're going to hit the button that says create a new group. You can see I already have some sections here. So they don't know that they're in your group, but you don't want to say like my worst class ever. You don't want to do that because you don't know who's over your shoulder looking. You don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So you might do something like section E. And you do need to add a group name. You don't need to add group notes. For me, I sometimes struggle to know what day it is. So for me, these notes would be helpful so that I would know that section E meets on Monday, period 6, for example. So then I would save changes. And then look, we've got section E as part of our list, which is cool. All right, so the next thing you probably want to know is how do you add students to these groups? So you can actually add more than one student at a time to a group. And I know that's helpful if I used to teach 140 students a day. So doing this, it would be helpful if I can add multiple students at a time. So I'm going to add Anne and Michniewicz to section. So I'm going to do select action. So what you've seen is I've chosen the 2 students. I've checked the box off next to each of their names. And then the next step is to select an action. And the only action I have to select is add to group, so that's easy. And then I'm going to add them to section E. I'm going to save changes. And then there you have it. How easy was that? So Anne and Michniewicz are both in section E. So now we know how to add students to groups. Okay, so moving on to the next step. All right, so perhaps that wasn't the most fun, but I'm hoping that now that we know the basics, we can get into doing some designing. So I'm going to click here, this Tinkercad icon in the upper left. And sometimes I just get lost in the depths of Tinkercad, and I find really cool places to explore, and then I get lost and I don't know where to go, because sometimes the menu isn't at the top. It often is, though. Whenever I click the Tinkercad icon, it actually, so I'm just setting up the Facebook Live again. I'm sharing my screen and going live again. Sorry guys that are on GoToWebinar, I just had to set up the Facebook Live. Okay, so I think we're back. Okay, cool. So I think we're back on Facebook Live as well. All right, so good. So this is the fun part. Not that that wasn't fun, the last part. So this is my personal gallery of things. I'd like to show you the community, the Tinkercad community gallery of things. So this is in the upper, the menu. At the top, I just clicked gallery. And this is where people in the Tinkercad community, this is where they share the creations that they've made. So when you make a creation, you don't actually have to share it. I'm going to show you just really quickly back in my own personal gallery how this works. So some of my stuff you'll see says public, and some of it says private. So if I wanted to make something public, so this is already public, I would just click on the setting, the little setting up here, and then I would click properties, and then I would change, this is already public, but if I wanted to make it private, I could make it private by clicking there and save changes. You can also write a little description of your object, whatever it is, in here too. So how this applies to teachers is, I know, for example, if I'm having students do a project, I like to create a model for them so that they, sorry, I'm setting up the Facebook Live again. Is it sharing the screen? I'm going to finish. I don't know. I'm sorry, Facebook Live people, but it's keeps shutting off. All right, so back into my gallery. So I want to show you the gallery, and the reason why I want to show you the gallery too is, as a teacher, you might want to create a project and make a model for students to use as an example. So you make your own model and you publish it to the gallery so that people can see it. Also, your students, maybe when they finish their work, they might want to publish theirs to the gallery because maybe you've given them feedback and their classmates have given them feedback, but by publishing their work into the gallery, that opens up a whole new world of opportunities for students to get authentic feedback from the Tinkercad community. So the next step that I'm going to do is go into the gallery. So you guys should all go in the gallery too and check it out. I love going to the gallery for inspiration. I also like to go to the gallery because if I'm trying to make something, like maybe there's something I'm trying to make, like a chair, I can search it and then I can look at other people's designs and I can analyze other people's designs to see what shapes they used in order to make it. I'm also choosing chair because one of the things I've noticed in working with teachers who are just starting out with Tinkercad is this is the common first project if they're creating their own projects. For example, there's a teacher I met recently whose third graders, their first project was to redesign their school desks, which I thought was super cool. I know another teacher in Boston who's awesome, who she actually has a list of personas that she created out of characters from The Simpsons, and she has students design chairs in order to fit the needs of the particular persona. So they're designing, but then they're also providing reasons and rationale for why they made the design decisions that they did based on the person that they're designing for. So I think that's super cool. And I like chairs. Who doesn't like chairs? So let's click on chair and see what happens. So tons of chairs. Pretty cool. I'm attracted to this chair because it reminds me of something I'd see at like IKEA or something. And it's a simple shape. So I wanted to show you something that you can design something that looks rather elegant using very few shapes. So I'm going to click copy and tinker. So you might find a chair that you want to copy and tinker, or you might want to choose this one. And when I copy and tinker, it means that I'm not messing with that person's design. It actually makes a copy that ends up in my gallery. One thing that you might notice looking in here is that this user interface looks different than what you might be used to in using Tinkercad recently. This is the legacy version of Tinkercad. So some of the things that you find in the gallery might be the legacy version. If you prefer to design in the new version, just go here back to your gallery. I'm going to do this with this chair too. And now that it's in my gallery, I have the option of, so that's the legacy version. If I click copy and tinker, it's actually going to convert that design into the new version of Tinkercad, which I find easier to use. So that's what I'm doing right now. So now it looks like the familiar Tinkercad. All right, just a few things. So I'm moving this chair around with my mouse. It's always best practice to use a mouse when you're designing in Tinkercad. You can use a trackpad, but it's just, you don't have as much control. It's not as much fun if you're using a trackpad. So I'm moving this around this way. Another thing I wanted to illustrate to you in terms of why I like Tinkercad is that anything that you want to do in Tinkercad, there's often more than one way to do it. So I can move this around also, so I can orbit like this with this cube at the top too. So I can use either my mouse or I can use the cube at the top, which is cool. So I can zoom in and zoom out with the wheel on my mouse, or I could zoom in and zoom out here. So there's many options and different ways of doing things. Another thing that I like to tell teachers is most teachers are pretty adept at using PowerPoint or other sorts of like word processing programs, and a lot of the commands are very similar to what you would find in PowerPoint. So even like, Control C or Control V or Control D. So a lot of those shortcuts remain, and just a lot of the, for example, like to select something in Tinkercad, you can do it by making a box around it, or you can just click on it as well. I'm going to make a box around it just to show you the different ways of doing it. And then if I want to make it bigger, I can just go like this and pull on the little white handles at the edge, and that makes it bigger. And it's kind of similar to like when you're making a picture bigger in a Word document. It's kind of the same concept. So I'm going to actually make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to ungroup it. So I'm going to select everything. I'm going to ungroup. And now this reveals the two shapes that made up this chair, which is super cool. You'll notice that this chair is made from both a solid shape, so the orange is a solid shape, and then the oval in the middle is actually a hole. We use holes in Tinkercad to subtract from solid shapes. So if you want to take a primitive like a cylinder or a box and make it more complex, you do that using holes. So I'm just going to adjust this a little bit just to show you how you can adjust things really easy. So I'm just dragging that white box at the top to make it taller. I'm going to now drag this one to make this taller. I'm going to spin it around. Maybe I'll rotate it to make it more inclined. That might not be super comfortable, but it's just a prototype, right? And then I'm going to group it together and see how my chair looks. It also looks like it might be floating too. It's exciting. All right, so when I group it together, oops, no, it's not floating. When I group it together, you can see how I changed the chair. I could also change the color of the chair and make it pink. I like making things pink. And there you have it. One note on changing colors. It's so much fun changing colors of things in Tinkercad, and kids love it too. But if you are thinking about fabricating or printing your object, you want to think about the filament as well, because I could make this chair pink in Tinkercad, but the filament, the plastic coil of wire that you see, or not wire, but looks like wire that you put in the back of a 3D printer, that's actually what determines the color. So if I had yellow filaments in my 3D printer of my chair, even though I sent it as pink, it's going to print out yellow. So that's just important to know. All right, so we're done with our chair. Let's go back. So let's click back to that Tinkercad icon again. And the next part of the menu that I want to highlight is new and exciting, and it's called Tinkercad for Popular Interests. So this is a little sub-menu that highlights different projects that are trending in the Tinkercad community. So it's always fun to know what the newest trends are. So Pokemon is one of them. So a lot of our users have been making really cute Pokemon characters. My daughter super appreciates that. Also fidget spinners. We know teachers love fidget spinners. So that's another popular item. Another thing to know is that a lot of these trending items are actually, the excitement that has been generated behind them is due to contests. So we hosted a contest to make the best Pokemon figure. Maybe we can have a contest about who can make the least annoying fidget spinner. That would be exciting. Teachers, right? All right, so we're going to get into Minecraft and bricks a little bit later, but I wanted to click on planters here and show you how Tinkercad sometimes puts out simple projects that are fun to do just to practice your skills. There are also cool things that you can actually make, like the holidays are coming up. It'd be cool to make a planter. So we're going to actually make this planter. And the instructions are here too if you want to go back and do it again, but I'd like for us to design together. I know as a teacher, I used to, the fun thing about going back to school was decorating my classroom. So wouldn't it be cool to design your own planter and print it and then show off to students that you actually designed this planter and printed it yourself? I'm sure they would be super impressed. All right, so I just clicked Create New Design, and now I'm on an empty blank work plane. So you have your blank canvas, but we're going to get started really quickly. So if I wanted my planter to be a box, that's easy. That's one of our basic shapes, and I can drag it out here. I can make my box bigger, so I can click on one of these little white squares at the edge to make it bigger. One trick I want to show you right now, because it's super helpful, is as I'm going to drag out these white boxes to make this bigger, I'm also going to hold down the Shift key. And if I do that, you can see that it's maintaining the proportions, even though it's getting bigger. So you can see that 67, 67, 54, 54. So that's staying consistent. And that's actually 54 millimeters. So the default for Tinkercad is millimeters. So that's just super cool to know. You can actually change down here. This is the snap grid. So you can change like how quickly. So if I were to move this with the arrow keys, I can make that move faster if I change the snap grid to 5, for example, and it moves fast. But I'm going to put it back to where it was. And I'm going to delete this because I don't want a box. I want something really cool. I want a truncated octahedron, and that's not in the basic shapes. So if you click on this basic shapes menu, it shows you all the different variety of shapes that you have to choose from. And I know that the shape that I want is in community shape generators. So I'm going to click community shape generators. And these are going to load relatively slow. But the cool reason why they're loading relatively slow is because these shapes were actually made by our community of Tinkercad users. So there are Tinkercad users who know how to code in JavaScript. And if you click actually up here in shape generators, it shows you how you can actually make a shape yourself. So if I went to new shape generator and I clicked extrusion, which is a really cool shape to play around with, this is the JavaScript that actually makes an extrusion. So it's super cool to be able to show students the computer programming and the coding and the math that's behind the geometry that they see. And if I wanted to take this extrusion and like make it twist, for example, or like change the, make the bottom smaller than the top, and I knew JavaScript, I could go in and make those changes there. So I just think that that's super cool, and I'm always so impressed with our users who are able to figure stuff like this out. So when I click on, I'm going to go back and click on design. It's always good to show kids what's going on under the hood, because that's something that might motivate them to want to advance their skills further, especially if they're into coding already. Okay, so I know that the shape that I want is called a truncated, it's not a cubic something, it's a truncated octahedron. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to drag this shape out onto my work plane. It's super tiny. If I were able to ask the person who made this why it's so tiny, I'd be really happy to know the answer to that. But we need to make it bigger. So again, I'm just dragging those little white squares out. I'm holding down my Shift key because I want it to maintain the proportions. I'm going to make this actually like 59. Oops, that went 49, so I can just fix that. Nope, that went flat, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to start over again. So Control-Z is your best friend, or that little arrow there. So there we go. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, like 57 works. Okay, and that stayed the same. So one thing I'm noticing with this shape, and these shapes tend to be a little bit funkier than the basic shapes, is that I need to now move this shape so that it's up flush with the work plane. So how I do that is, see this red arrow, sometimes it turns black at the top, I just pull it up like this. And see that number at the bottom that's number -7? That's -7 millimeters below the work plane. I want it to be flush with the work plane because I don't want it to float on my desk either. That would defy the laws of gravity. All right, so it's 0 on the work plane. And I also know I want to check to make sure it can actually sit flat on my desk. So that could sit flat on my desk. So I'm going to move this guy over here into the middle. I'm just using the arrow keys. I like to go back and forth between the keys and the mouse when I'm designing. All right, so if you're here with me, you've accomplished the first step, and you should be super proud of yourself. You're kind of almost done because there's not many more steps to go. All right, so here we go. I'm going to select this time by just clicking on it. So I need to select this, and I'm going to say Control D. And Control D is going to duplicate the shape that I made. And then I'm going to take my duplicate that I made, and I'm going to turn it into a hole. I want you to actually see what happens, though. So see how that shape duplicated? And I'm going to make it a hole because I want to hollow it out and put it inside the, I want it to be hollow and concentric inside the white outer shell. And I'm going to go back again to, because I don't want to move it. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to now make this out. So right now what I have selected is the hole. And again, we use the hole to subtract from solid shapes. And I'm going to hold my Shift key. I want to maintain those same proportions, but I want to make it smaller. I want to make it, I don't know, like 40, 50 could work. All right, let's do 48. All right, so don't worry about your little hole guy. He's in there. He's just stuck inside. I think he's hanging out a little bit on the end, but we'll fix that. All right, so what we're going to do next, and this is one of my the things that I think is most fun in Tinkercad, is we're going to use the Align tool. When you're using the Align tool, you're trying to center things. So if you have any type of OCD tendencies, which I sometimes do, it perfectly centers things the way that you want them to be. Like right now, that's driving me crazy that that's hanging out on the edge, but I can fix that really easily. So the Align tool is up here. I'm going to click on it, and then you'll see this grid pop out. And you don't have to use all of the different nodes on the grid. You just need to use the ones that you want to use. I want this to be concentric, so I want to put, I'm going to click this one. I'm going to click this one. This one, the first one for some reason didn't click. So there's only 3 that I've clicked. So just to show you, I've clicked this one because I want it to also be concentric in the middle as well. So that's what I've clicked. So I'm going to click away because I know it's centered on the inside. I'm really excited to see how it gets hollowed out so I can fit my plants. But the other problem is I need the plants to come off the top here. So I'm going to actually need to go into my basic shapes. I'm going to grab my trusty old box and pull that out there. And I'm going to turn the box into a hole. And the reason why I'm turning it into a hole is I'm going to use it to knock the top off of the planter so that it's open and flat at the top. So I'm actually not going to hit Shift this time because it doesn't really need to be tall. It just needs to be wide. And I'm going to make it pretty big so that I know that I've got everything that I need. I might make it a little bit bigger at the top. All right, and once I'm satisfied, I'm going to lift it using that arrow at the top. And then I'm just going to pan around because, see, this is the power of camera controls. That looked pretty good from here, but when I look around this way, not so good. So I know that I want to bring it down a little bit, pretty substantially. Actually, probably want to bring it down even more than that. And I also want to move it over this way so it covers the whole top. So I'm going to move it like this. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so it's easier to navigate with. Not that small, because you can see the top. Okay, and I want to dip this down just a little bit lower. So you can see how important it is to really understand your camera controls. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I think that we've got a really good design. So the last step is we need to group everything together. And once we group everything together, it's going to turn into one single solid. So I'm going to draw a box around everything. And then I am going to click on this icon up here that looks like two shapes grouping together, because that's what it is. And once I click group, voila, the magic of Tinkercad. So you see you have this really super cool planter that you can also move around. You can make it bigger too. You can change the color as well. So maybe I want to make it orange because it goes with the tablecloth on my desk. You might also want to check the size by inches. So this is pretty tiny. So you could check the inches by going here to edit grid and go from millimeters to inches and update grid, and then it'll tell you how many inches. So right now it's only 1.5 inches, which is not very big. So I might want to make it bigger. Like I might want to make it like 3 inches tall. Oops, that did a weird thing. Control Z. But you catch my drift. You can make it bigger too before you print just by scaling in that way that I showed you. Okay, so congratulations, you made a planter. If you wanted to print this, you would go to Export, Download for 3D printing. You would make it an STL file. Typically speaking, most printers are going to use STL files, so that's usually a pretty safe choice. If you don't have a 3D printer, there are also different companies that you could contact and send your file to have it 3D printed and mailed to your house. So just in time for the holidays as well. All right, so now we're going to go back. So we've done a little designing ourselves. At this point, I just wanted to show you some of the cool features in the Tinkercad for Popular Interest menu. We're probably going to run a little bit over based on the issue that happened earlier with the alarm in the building. It seems as though I'm safe, so thank you for those who are worried. But you're welcome to stick around. I'm going to try to continue the presentation regardless. So next step, so popular interest, so Pokemon, fidget spinners. The other one I wanted to point out is Minecraft. So as an adult, you might not know about Minecraft as well as your students do, but it's a super popular video game that educators are actually really getting into in terms of thinking about not just how much fun kids can have with this game, but how much they can learn. Particularly, there have been some educational theorists that have been looking into how students can even learn about computational thinking through playing Minecraft. So super serious stuff, but through play. So in Minecraft, I'm going to show you some figures that someone made for Minecraft. I just found this in the gallery. So in Minecraft, you can make things like figures. It's basically a whole world that you can explore. You start out just with the element of wood, and then you have to build from there. So these are some figures that you might see in Minecraft. And then eventually, you need to figure out how to make a pickaxe. So this is the icon for Minecraft, and you actually use this to mine elements. But in Tinkercad, when you click on this, it actually turns your figures into Minecraft figures. Right now, you might be thinking this looks more like Atari than Minecraft. But you can actually, there's ways to fix that. So you can actually make it more refined by clicking on the icon up here. And that actually maybe looks more like Nintendo. But this is the aesthetic that kids like as well. So they're still blocky, but you can see their eyes and stuff. It's cute. And then on the right-hand side, our Minecraft fans really love that we have the elements there rather than the colors. So in Minecraft, so there is an extra step to get your creations into Minecraft, and I just want to show you that really quickly. So I'm going back here. I'm going to Tinkercad for Minecraft. So this is a place that if you're really into this idea of Minecraft, and maybe you're a school that doesn't have a 3D printer and you want to think of meaningful ways for your students to actually still use Tinkercad, there's tons of them. It's like one of my favorite things to think about. But Minecraft is definitely one of them. You know, they can make something that feels real to them because it's they can use it in a game that they play. So on the Minecraft page, there's a bunch of videos that are on YouTube that you can watch about it. I actually taught myself how to use Tinkercad using YouTube, so there's tons of videos, not just about Minecraft. We even have our own Tinkercad channel on YouTube. If you look here, This actually shows you how you can install, so you have to install an additional program in your computer called Install Make Edit in order to take your creations that you've made in your Minecraft creations in Tinkercad and to export them into Minecraft. If this sounds daunting to you, I'm sure your kids probably will be able to figure it out. So it's one of those things that if your kids are super motivated and they're super into gaming and they want to show how, what they are doing at home is actually valuable in school as well, I'm sure that they would help you out in terms of figuring it out too. All right, one more thing that I wanted to show you is, so this is another cool design that I think someone made for Minecraft. And it's a cool castle. So you can also think about, like, some of your kids might be into Minecraft, maybe some of your other kids are into architecture. So how a project like this could address, a lot of students' interests at the same time. So this is a castle that you can clearly, very easy, turn into Minecraft using the blocks feature. And again, I can further refine it to make it look super cool. So that's refining it. Great. What else you can do with this castle that I think is really awesome, and this is a brand new feature in Tinkercad, is you can actually turn the castle into bricks. So I'm sure that this bricks icon is probably something that's very familiar to you. Click on bricks, and let's see what happens. Look at that. Hopefully this is looking even more familiar to you. All right, and I can also refine this even further by clicking up here. Soften the edges. It's going to actually come out being made with more bricks than before. It's totally worth the wait. All right, so see how it's stacking up there? And it looks like something you might see like in an advertisement. It's super cool. So there's the castle, and you can imagine now, so in thinking about, like, my school doesn't have a 3D printer, how can I engage students with 3D design? Well, maybe have them make something in Tinkercad, like a house or a castle, and then have them convert it into bricks, and they could build it in bricks themselves. And this, if you click on this layers feature, it shows you how you can use this new feature in Tinkercad in order to create a blueprint for your design. So you've designed the castle in Tinkercad, you've converted it into bricks, and now you have it into layers. So there are 32 layers that made up that castle. And as you click, you can see them building like this, and you can see how you could stop along the way and zoom in and see this is how many bricks are in this layer, this is how many are in the next layer. You can zoom in and see what size bricks are being used. So this is super exciting stuff. All right, so that's bricks. We are getting towards the end of time, but I'm just going to keep going because I'm happy to keep teaching you some of these things. Because there's another feature that I would love to show you, which is called circuits. And I'm going to do this very quickly because this is for you super ambitious teachers, but I know that there's been a lot of excitement around circuits, particularly because this is Computer Science and Education Week for many people, and a lot of people have been doing our code activities, and they want to keep it going now, and they're eager to find new projects to do. And this would be a cool one. So this is circuits. This is where your students can prototype electronic designs completely within the browser before building them in real life. So I'm sure maybe some of you have seen those snap circuits sets that kids can actually build things with their hands. This is another version of it where it's simulated, so you can actually build it and design it here and then make it in real life. But you'll know that it works because you've simulated it here. So I'm going to click on this. This is a very simple design that I made. So waiting for it to load. So here's my design. It's very simple. This is an Arduino. You'll probably recognize that. And all I've added to it in my design is the Arduino already lit. There's a little light that lit up just as part of the component, but I wanted to add an external LED light. So all the components, so you can see here how you add components in circuits. So I could add a motor to this or a battery to it, and you would just drag it out this way to add it, and then I would need to wire it like I've wired this. And I'm going to delete that for now. I want to show you how it works. So when you make something in circuits, once you click Start Simulation, it's very, very subtle, but you can actually see, I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. You can actually see my light is lighting up. So this one already automatically lit as part of the Arduino, but this is something that I did myself, and I was super proud of myself when I figured it out. So how did I do it? I went into the code editor. This is brand new in circuits that we have these block-based code, these visual coding blocks, kind of similar to what you'd see in Scratch. So how I got this light to light up is I went in here and I grabbed this block. So this block had been in here, and I connected it down here. And then all I needed to do is then just change the number to 11 because I had wired this pin into 11. So I just changed 11, and if I took this block away and I simulated it, it doesn't work anymore. It shouldn't work anymore. Maybe it's because it's still hovering around. But anyways, I was proud of myself, and this is something that I hope to continue to explore, and hopefully you do too. Okay, last thing, very last thing is Instructables. So we talked a little bit about Instructables before, but I just wanted you to see this, like what a great resource it is for teachers. Instructables is a DIY website. You can learn to basically make anything in Instructables. You can bake, you can learn to do leather work, you can learn really super cool STEM projects using Tinkercad. You can make Game of Thrones etched glasses, super exciting. There's also a dedicated teacher page in Instructables. So, and this actually came out, I believe, this summer. So it's broken down into grades K through 5, K through 8, and also by subjects. Another thing I wanted to show you in Instructables is actually a project that I've been working on, which is writing Instructables for a teacher audience. So the Instructables in general are for a general audience, but the Instructables at the Tinkercad for Education page are for specifically designed for you, for teachers. And even I wrote some of these for some teachers that I know were asking me questions. So you'll see how to teach history using Tinkercad, how to teach math with 3D design. This one, how to bring Tinkercad into your classroom, was actually the inspiration for this webinar. So a lot of the information that you hear me saying was the result of this Instructable that I created. And it was pretty popular, so we thought, how can we do this in a new format? For science teachers, how to save coral reefs using 3D design. There's also a lot of interdisciplinary applications to this coral reef project too that I noted. This one I think is super important, which is the how to teach the language of 3D modeling. For me coming into this, like I was not a 3D design pro when I first started working at Tinkercad or at Autodesk. And one of the issues that I was thinking about also as a teacher is if a word like extrude is familiar to me, but I don't really understand it within like the technical concept or context, that for a student who doesn't speak English as a first language, that's just another kind of cognitive load that they have when they are trying to learn something as complex as design. So I created this, this Instructable as a way of creating a glossary for both teachers and students to understand the language of 3D design, because we don't want that to be a barrier to you or your students being able to do 3D design. So it's also broken down beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And advanced gets into that Fusion 360 language, which is super fun. So I would check that out. There's also downloadable PDFs that you can, that are like vocabulary sheets. So that's a cool one. This one I feel very fond about because I did it in collaboration with a teacher. So this is a real teacher. He lives in Canada. He's super awesome. And this is a real project that he does with his students. He designs 3D population maps with them. And he's up in Canada, so some of these examples are from Canada. It's the different territories and provinces in Canada, but he's also made He also made models in Tinkercad for the United States as well. So when you look at an Instructable, it's step-by-step instructions, but then it's also links to different resources. So if you can take this project and take it many different directions. So you could be talking about changing demographics. You could talk about the Electoral College. So we've provided links to different data sources. Vernon, the teacher, also created models in Tinkercad and published them to the gallery. So you don't need to look for the map yourself. You can just use his. And you can see how he has his students adjusting the map in order to show the different statistical data. So this, I think, was population. And that's his student working on it. The main reason why I wanted to show you this was because of its section on standards. So a lot of times you might be feeling like you want to teach 3D design, but you don't know how to pitch it to your administrator in a way that they're not going to freak out that your classroom is going to go out of control. So it's always helpful to think about what standards your project are going to address. So this is an example of how this project could address millions of standards, and it has so many different interdisciplinary applications as well. Like these are history standards that it connects with or could connect with, English language arts standards that it could connect with, math standards that it could connect with, even Canadian standards that it could connect with as well. So that's basically it in terms of my presentation. I know it went a little bit long, and I know some of you guys were texting me that you were scared about the emergency alert, but I think I'm okay. But I want to pull up just the PowerPoint again, if I can find it. So I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint again. And it's here somewhere. I'm working on 2 different screens right now, so it's confusing. Sorry, just give me a second. Play around with Tinkercad while I'm trying to figure this out, because my mouse is going nuts. Is my PowerPoint closed? Or is that it there? All right, well, let's open up PowerPoint again, and there we are. Okay, so view. Okay, so you should see my slideshow again. I'm going to jump to slide 18. So I just wanted to think about you teachers who have been sitting here for now more than an hour about how you might use this webinar for your upcoming evaluation, because I know that that's sometimes tricky when you have to generate artifacts of your learning. So these are just some ideas that I was thinking of. So you could show your evaluator that you've completed all 6 lessons, and you could do that by taking screenshots of the 6 lessons. You could go in tomorrow and set up your Tinkercad classroom and have all your students, and then show your administrator that you have a roster of students in Tinkercad. Another cool one would be to create a model in Tinkercad of something that you might have students do as a project and publish that to the gallery. So these are just some ideas, and you'll get sent this PowerPoint. Other ways to stay connected. So we have a Tinkercad Forum. Once you're sent this slideshow, you'll have the link to that within the slideshow. There's a Tinkercad Help Center. There's also a Tinkercad Facebook page, which we were broadcasting live until it stopped working. There's also a Tinkercad Twitter account, Instagram, and Pinterest, and those are all there. The links are all there. And then just some parting advice. Again, I'm happy to stick around if people have questions. I appreciate you sticking with us through our technical difficulties at the beginning. So some parting advice: you don't need to be an expert to get started. It's okay to make mistakes. You saw me make mistakes today. I just Control-Z, it's over. It's not a big deal. We learn from mistakes. It's also important to find other allies that are supporting what you're doing. It might not be easy at your school, so maybe you want to reach out to some of the communities that I actually have linked to in a resource document that I'm sending you. You might have to find your allies in other places, other schools, but sometimes that makes it more fun. Celebrate the little victories. A lot of people who, like me, who get really into like big projects like interdisciplinary project-based learning and creating symposiums. We sometimes get lost in the big picture, but don't really focus on the small things that actually might be very important to students. And just never stop learning. You're doing that right now, and I want to continue to learn even more about Tinkercad. So just keep learning. So that's the end of the formal presentation, but I would like for people to stick around if they want for me to answer questions. And I'm just going to get up my screen here. No, that's actually my student screen. I'm going to get up my Tinkercad screen so that I can maybe play around with some designs and answer any questions that people have. Right, so questions? Also, the PowerPoint is available right now on a link. Yes, the PowerPoint is available. I think it's going to be emailed to you, but it's also available on a link. So,
Kellyanne, we have a question from someone about how we get those teacher lessons.
How to get to?
The teacher lessons presented.
Oh, the teacher lessons, yes, I had actually meant to do that. So if you go to Learn, this is where you find the 6 step-by-step lessons. But also, if you go to, so this is where you learn the basic moves. But if you go to Projects, which is super cool, this is where you can actually find more elaborate projects, like build a space station. I'm going to click on this one. And these are great to get started. It's like no-fail projects that it's really kind of like personalized learning because kids can go at their own pace. You can also use this as part of your own professional development. Maybe you're not doing this with kids first. You're just doing it by yourself to learn the moves of Tinkercad, but in a cool way. So these are the lessons. Any other questions, Kayla?
Yes. Any suggestions on how to integrate Tinkercad and 3D printing in traditional high school classrooms like Algebra 1 geometry and Algebra 2?
So in high school classrooms?
Yes.
Yeah, so actually if you go to the Tinkercad, if you go to the Instructables page, I'm going to go to Instructables, and you go to How to Teach Math, is a super good one. And that gets into cool ideas for projects. And I'm going there now. There we are. Okay, so Instructables, How to Teach Math. This has been a super popular Instructable. So this is broken down by grade level as well. So this is earlier grades. So elementary, middle school, and then high school. So one example is to make geometric constructions and visualize relationships between 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional objects. So for example, you could do this in Fusion or Tinkercad, probably create a sketch of a 2D object and then rotate it around an axis to create a 3D shape. Actually, that's kind of more Fusion, 360. But actually, if you watch this video, this is a cool video. Let me play this. This video, these students are actually using Tinkercad, and they are doing theater design, but they're doing algebra at the same time. So let me play this video for you. Hopefully you can hear it.
Okay, here we got Justin and Andre working on their project. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on here.
So we were given the slope 1 to 12.
Wait, back up. What is this?
Oh, we're working on the theater project for York.
So you're working on creating a 3D model
Yes.
of the theater project that's going out right outside this room, right?
Yes.
And so what was the problem that you ran into?
The problem we ran into was we didn't know how to calculate the slope in degrees of the room.
Okay.
So we were given 1 to 12, which we weren't really sure what it meant.
Right.
And we asked Mr. Brigghausen, and he said that it was probably the rise over run, which is the slope.
Yeah.
And so we put the y as 1 and the 12 as the x, which we were given 1 to 12. And then using this triangle, we realized that we can calculate the angle by doing the inverse tangent of 1 over 12, and that gave us the angle of 4.76.
So I thought that was a super cool example because it shows how students are going from Tinkercad to paper to like talking to each other and talking about their mathematical reasoning. So Tinkercad is a perfectly cool tool. You got to meet your students where they're at. So even with your high school students, if they've never had experience with Tinkercad, you might not want to throw them right into Fusion 360. You might want to do a few lessons in Tinkercad first, get them acclimated. And also the designs that you make in Tinkercad can also then be imported into Fusion 360 for some of the more advanced applications that you might want to do, like doing that rotate thing that was alluded to in the that standard that I read. Other questions, Kayla?
At the start, you said the Tinkercad object could be animated. How do you do that?
Oh, for the one with the little guys that are glowing?
I guess so, yes, at the beginning.
Yeah. So these guys here, so they can be animated, not animated like cartoon animated, but they can be, you can actually, when you're designing in Tinkercad, there's an option to, let me show it to you. There's an option in Tinkercad where you can get circuit assemblies, so you can actually put these, the LED light inside of your creation after you print it. Let me show you that. So create a new design. And then here, okay, so underneath basic shapes, there's an option for circuit assemblies. So you can pull this out, and this is the right dimensions for you to fit an LED light, so you can kind of build around that. This is for move, so this is the assembly for you to make your object vibrate. So that's what I mean by animate. I don't mean like cartoon animation. I mean that you can actually bring your objects to life by actually making them physically vibrate and light up. And there, I think there's also, when you choose the LED light, they give you suggestions for where you can buy them, but it's basic hardware that you'd be able to find at a basic hardware store. But these assemblies themselves actually print out. So you just need to buy the LED light, or in this case, the coin battery that's being used in the switch to make this move. So that's what I meant. Does that make sense?
Great, thank you. We have maybe one more question and we'll wrap up for today.
Cool.
So we have one come in. How do you split a design into two parts that can be merged for two-color 3D printing?
Right, so how do you
split a design into two parts for two-color 3D printing?
Well, first off, you need to have a 3D printer that has that allows for two filaments. But I actually did this with, I'll show you actually, it wasn't split in half, but I actually printed these, 40 of them last week, these hockey pucks. So these I actually printed in two colors. And so I left them, it didn't really matter what color they were because of the filament, but basically once I sent this file to Cura, Cura actually remembered where I sent it as two different parts. So when I exported it as two different parts, and then when it was sent to Cura, it actually, when it landed there, which is the slicing program that we use, or that we used here to make the hockey pucks, Cura actually remembered like where the different parts were supposed to be. I don't know if that answers the question, but you can print things from Tinkercad in two different colors. You just need to have the two different color filaments. And I know at least Cura, when you use that program, it actually remembers where in space each one is so that it prints as one part. Did that answer the question?
I think so.
Okay. Because we had to figure that out ourselves a couple weeks ago. Any other questions?
No, things wrapped up. That's great.
Okay, well, thank you guys. Anyone who's still sticking around, you deserve, I don't know, some type of celebration or certificate or sticker. So thank you so much. Sorry again for our little security scare, but everything is safe in the building. I think that was a drill. And hopefully you guys will stick around for the next one that we should be announcing shortly. So we'd love to hear your ideas. So any ideas that you have for what future episodes should be about. And please, any feedback that you have doesn't necessarily have to be positive. I'd love to hear any ideas that you have in order to make this more meaningful for teachers, because that's really what we care about.
And you'll actually get a survey at the end here. It'll pop up with that opportunity to share that information.
Thank you, Kayla. All right, so I'm checking out for now. Thank you, guys. Hope to see you later.